Final Fantasy XIV just changed the game. In a moment when people expected Square Enix to do the exact same thing they always do, they threw a curveball. And a curveball that, if their aim is true, may end up changing the entire game forever. That is not exaggeration, that is not hyperbole. I didn't think they would do something like this before 8.0. But it's coming in with the Deep Dungeon in 7.3.5, but we're getting it. Hello everyone. I am Jmulls, and the patch 7.3 live letter just happened, and we have a lot to talk about. Okay, so the patch trailer is pretty much what you expect it to look like. They even talked about how it feels a little bit light because they're actively trying to avoid spoilers. And if you look back to the 7.2 trailer, yeah, they just didn't care. That thing was spoiler-centric. I still think it's overall a pretty decent trailer. The Deep Dungeon looks gorgeous as ever, and I'm really excited and interested to find out what happens in the MSQ. We are going to have a big confrontation with Calyx, but it does feel as if they're only showing the very obvious stuff for the most part, in an active attempt to keep as much under wraps as they can. I think that's a smart decision, so let's move on to the rest of the live letter. I don't want us to spend too much time on this because it is largely what you expect it to be. There's new main story, new dungeon, a new trial, normal and extreme. But we are finally getting the 7.3 changes to the Occult Crescent. They've talked about these before, so we'll breeze right through these. So now, if you go into the Occult Crescent Southhorn with an alliance of 24 players, you'll get your own exclusive instance. And if you meet the Fork Tower entry requirements, 5 minutes after starting, like when you get onto the island, an Aurora Mirage will spawn. And you'll keep having exclusivity on that instance until that Mirage expires, which they say is about up to 10 minutes after your arrival. But they are augmenting the requirements with Sanguine Ciphers. So the minimum number is going to go up from 16 to 24. And I'll just quote their slide here. It will now be possible to check the Sanguine Ciphers that have been offered and your selection status, i.e. entry confirmed, eligible for selection, ineligible for selection. But the kicker is, players must offer at least one Sanguine Cipher to be selected for Fork Tower entry. And if you've not offered any Sanguine Ciphers, you're just not going to be selected. So the way that I read that is, if you go into the Occult Crescent with a pre-formed 24-man, you're all going to need your own Sanguine Cipher. But if you have it, you'll be able to just go into your instance, 5 minutes afterwards, an Aurora Mirage will spawn, and you're good to go. And the occurrence of new Aurora Mirages will be put on hold during critical encounters, so you can get those done out the way before the Aurora Mirage actually spawns. Treasure coffers found after encounters with persistent pots and happy bunnies will be adjusted to always contain enlightenment gold pieces or silver pieces, so just augmenting the reward structure for those activities in the Occult Crescent. We're getting the new Alliance raid, Echoes of Vana'diel Part 2, Sandoria, the second walk. This place looks absolutely gorgeous, by the way, and the music that is there, I'm pretty sure it's just lifted from Final Fantasy XI, but good god is it good. We're also getting a new Crystalline Conflict Arena, the Bayside Battleground, a blend between the aesthetics of Tyral and Alexandria, and I think it looks rather cool. Now, granted, it is just a PvP arena, but it's nice to see they haven't just given up on PvP. We're getting the new Treasure Dungeon, which is Vault 1 Iron, as I like to call it, which has this, like, neat slot machine kind of mechanic. The Unreal Trial is the one we kind of expected, the Wreath of Snakes, and then the stuff they talked about the last live letter, duty support for Cutter's Cry. For Hrothgar and Viera, there's expanded headgear support. Note they didn't say that every piece of headgear will be available to use on your Hrothgar or Viera, just more options will be available to you. But on Viera specifically, you'll be able to hide your ears. And if you like to wear hoods, but you also have bangs and you wonder where they go, if they just like migrated for the summer, well, good news, your bangs will now display while you're actually wearing hood-type headgear. Finally, we have the technology. We're getting the new Cosmic Exploration Star, Fana, which is that fungal-infested planet. We're getting the next step in our relic weapons. Note, this is for 7.3.1, that's the Cosmic Exploration new star, and the Phantom weapon stuff. And then, yeah, you guessed it, you may not like it, but we certainly guessed it. For patch 7.3.5, that's when we get the Deep Dungeon. That's when we get the new Allied Society quest for the Yakoi. That's when we get the next stage of Hildebrand quests. And you may be going, well, Jmulls, doesn't that just sound like a standard Final Fantasy XIV patch? Why were you kind of glazing at the start of this video? Well, it's because of the Deep Dungeon, because they've been cooking. The Deep Dungeon was easily the longest part of the live letter, and for good reason, because they are really hinting at a philosophical change in direction for the game. I'm not joking about that, they just said it. Yoshi P talked about how, in the past, you can kind of categorize patches either by the fact they target hardcore players or more casual players. And a lot of content can feel as if it's designed to either be enjoyed by the casual audience or the hardcore audience, and not too much felt as if it was designed for just everyone. But that's where things are going to change. Now, I want to pre-state this. They didn't say all content going forward is designed to please everyone. Designed for the casual audience and also for the hardest of the hardcore. They didn't say that. They said you have to have content to appeal to those extremes. It's just they want more stuff that has a broader appeal. And they're starting with Pilgrim's Traverse, our new deep dungeon coming in patch 7.35. They even call it a deep dungeon for everyone. Whether you're more casual or hardcore, whether you fly solo or run with a fixed party, Pilgrim's Traverse has something for everyone to enjoy. 1. They've changed a bunch here. So you know how in previous deep dungeons you could only do a matched party up to like floor 30? Well, now it goes all the way up to 100. You don't have to do a match party, it's just available. And there's way more checkpoints, to where if your team gets knocked out, you're no longer going to go all the way back to like floor 21 or floor 1. There's new breakpoints at floor 31, 51, and 71. So if you wipe to the new level 99 boss, you're not going to go all the way back down to floor 21, you're going to go back to floor 71. So you still lose some progress to maintain that deep dungeon feel, it's just not going to be the giant kick in the balls that it used to be. They give you some really cool power-ups here, like apparently you'll be able to like, transform into various monsters, or you can call in like Feoul to just nuke an entire floor for you. Yeah, Feoul has a massive presence here by the way, so it's already goated content. But also, now that you can do a match party for the entirety of this new deep dungeon all the way to floor 100, they added new things, new objectives to the challenge log, which they hope will increase incentivization for people to come back to this content. Because also, remember, you can level in here. Not from like level 1, but you can level alt jobs for like 91 plus here. You can get some glamour, you can get some minions, a Feoul minion as well by the way, a variety of mounts. But that's not why I glazed the deep dungeon at the start of this video. They talked about it rather quickly in the last live letter, but they're doing a harder fight at the very end. The level, or should I say, floor 99 fight has a special, separate encounter. They're calling it a quantum fight, because, you know, we have not enough names to describe difficulty in Final Fantasy XIV. But what this quantum fight is, it's a separate version of the final floor 99 fight, but it has scalable difficulty. Stay with me now. When you unlock floor 100, when you get there, you are rewarded with these offerings. There's 5 kinds. In order to fight the quantum version of the final verse, which is the boss fight, you have to use some of these offerings. And when you actually beat the fight, that's when the offerings are consumed. So if you fight him and you just die, you didn't beat the fight, so you recoup those offerings that you used. And if you want to go in and try again, you can. It's just your offerings will be consumed when you beat the fight. Sounds simple enough, right? Well, there are 5 types of offerings: sacramental spirits, spices, grain, light, and lilies. And you can use up to 8 of each of these sacrificial offerings. So a total of 40 as a maximum. But the thing is, depending upon the amount of offerings and the type of offerings you use, you augment the difficulty of the fight. It has 5 main parameters: physical damage, light damage, dark damage, fire damage, and maximum HP. Each of the specific types of offerings augments the stat. They didn't talk about which one does which yet, but there'll be a offering just for physical damage, just one for dark damage, another one for just maximum HP, so you can slot them in however many you want. If you want to just max out all the stats and go all in on the 40, you can do that. If you say, hey, we don't mind it doing more damage, but we don't want it to have as much HP, you can do that. If you're like, hey, we are really struggling with this one mechanic that does light damage, what if we increase its physical and dark damage, but we don't increase its light damage? Well, you also may be going, well, Jmulls, are we just making it do more damage and be a bigger health sponge? That's kind of boring, don't you think? They agree, because the more offerings you put in, the more mechanics it gets. Like, it changes the fight, not just the stat line. The more offerings you put into this jabroni, the different its mechanics will be. So you're not only buffing this thing in terms of the stats it has, you're buffing it in terms of the mechanics it brings to the table as well. They even talked about, if you're dumping all 40 into this fight, you can expect mechanics that are ultimate difficulty. They even talked about how there might be a world race just for this fight. And I mean, we'll see, but who knows? Now, they talked about how the additional boss mechanics this thing is going to get will be based on the total number of offerings made. So I don't know if you max out the offerings that give it additional light damage, is that will give it a new light-based ability. Or if, say, theoretically, a new light-based ability is unlocked after 24 offerings, can you increase the other stat parameters, not including light damage, so when you unlock that new ability, it's not being further buffed? You see how much you could possibly think about this? This is so cool to me. And if you're wondering, well, what are they going to do to incentivize this? They're just gonna give you more rewards. Which, yeah, it's simple, but I think it'll be effective. But that can be a conversation for another day. What I want to focus in on is just how wide-reaching this could be. Because this is an idea, this is a type of difficulty that can apply to pretty much everything in the game. Now, I talked about on stream, because my mind immediately went to, oh, well, what about Ultimate? Could you apply a quantum to a fight and scale it up to be difficulty equivalent to an Ultimate at the top end, but make it far more manageable for people to try to get into that fight, and have it like start off at like a normal raid or like an extreme trial in terms of difficulty, or just a savage fight, and work your way up to ultimate. They didn't talk about doing this. I want to just preface this. This is just me spitballing, but this is where my mind went immediately. I don't think they'll do it with ultimate specifically, because they did talk about before how they do need to have content that specifically targets both extremes, hardcore and casual. The ultimate is, well, the definitive hardcore content. What I do think is more likely though, extreme trials, regular raids, apply a scaling difficulty system to that content as well, to give players a way to bridge the gap to get experience in those intermediate skill levels all the way up to something like an ultimate. Because that jump in difficulty between various strata of content can be very off-putting and intimidating for a lot of people. But if you give them a way to like wean themselves onto it and get to the difficulty they so like, and to get experience with content that is just a little bit harder here, a little bit harder there. Oh, you can augment this experience. If you're really struggling with this, you can make the other parts a little bit harder for yourself, so that one mechanic, or this like swath of mechanics, may be easy and more digestible for you. What I don't want people to focus in on is the short-term stuff here. Sure, the final verse quantum looks interesting by itself. Could be a lot of fun. I think the Deep Dungeon looks phenomenal. I'm really looking forward to it. The important part of this patch is the long-reaching ramifications the quantum system can have for the game. Because this to me is game-changing. This to me is that overall shift in design philosophy that I've been talking about for like the last couple of weeks that I didn't think they would talk about, or let alone implement into the game until something like 8.0. We're getting that in 7.35. And Yoshipi even talked about in the live letter, this is in direct response to a lot of the criticism he has seen over the last few years. Again, this is potentially just, for those who have MMO brain rot and will know this term, legendary ring in it, this could just be me like overthinking it, right? 1000% possible. But again, where my mind goes with this is, what about questing? One of the biggest problems a lot of people have is that stuff in the overworld and stuff in like leveling or questing is just so dang easy and brain dead for a lot of people that it's not engaging. Whereas a lot of other people go, well, I like the fact that it's very easy. That's what I like. I find that relaxing. I don't need to be focusing in all the time. That being super easy is relaxing to me, and I find enjoyment in that. There's nothing wrong with that. But with a system like Quantum, you could implement that to like regular questing or leveling and stuff like that to allow people to augment the experience to what they like. The natural follow-up would be, Jmulls, well, why would anyone do like leveling content that's harder or something? I think you could just make an augment and say, hey, we'll give you like some bicolor gems maybe. I imagine it would be hard to actually implement into the game, and I don't see how they would do stuff like fates in an open world environment with scalable difficulty like Quantum, unless you specifically spawn fates of a certain difficulty and people can choose to interface with them or not. What I think this does is lead to a lot of interesting conversation in terms of how this type of difficulty, this scalable, customizable, augmented difficulty, can be applied to other elements of the game. Someone commented on my stream, you can implement this kind of stuff for like dungeons. One of the first things we talked about when we were reacting to this live letter on my stream, Variant Dungeon is in 7.4. They just came out and said that, by the way. Variant Dungeon is in 7.4. You could take this quantum difficulty there as well, and you can incentivize people to do it and to reach for higher heights by giving them more rewards and also more guaranteed rewards. Because also, by the way, you can still try and solo the Deep Dungeon. They wanted to maintain that gameplay style. It's still there. And if we want to talk about the reward structure, let's talk about Piece of the Blessed Horde. If you do the standard version of the fight, the final verse, you get occasional drops of them. But if you do the final verse quantum, you get guaranteed drops, and they're also proportionate to the number of the offerings made. So if you put in 10 offerings, you'll get more rewards, I imagine, than if you just put in 2. And if you put in all 40, and you actually do that fight, which again, will have mechanics of ultimate difficulty, supposedly, you'll get a bunch of rewards. And you also get this stuff, Piece of the Blessed Horde, in the challenge log. So there's not just one way to acquire this stuff, it's letting you tackle the content in the way you want to. If you're a group of god gamers, you can probably bang out a lot of these rewards rather quickly if you have the skill level in order to take down the final verse quantum with high offerings. Or if you don't, and you just want to take your time, you can slowly whittle away at the rewards over time by doing the basic content, regular final verse, the challenge log, every week. They are really experimenting here with the Deep Dungeon, and specifically with that final fight, the final verse with Quantum. I think the Deep Dungeon itself looks really fun and interesting, but it is that Quantum fight that I think can really change the future direction of Final Fantasy XIV. That to me is the curveball. That to me is, if they nail it, heck, they don't even have to nail Quantum in this implementation. They just have to show a proof of concept, and then iterate on it in the future and find ways to take that idea, to take that difficulty, and to apply it to other elements of the game. They don't have to add it to everything, right? They can pick and choose. But what I'm saying is this gives them so many more options in the future. And I really, really hope they lean into this. This has so much potential, and I'm fully on board with this idea. And now all of a sudden, 7.3 is seeming way less of a dead patch than some people made it out to be. Or even that it appeared to be. Final Fantasy XIV 7.3 is seeking to change the game, fundamentally. Not only is it the conclusion of the Dawntrail story, but also the implementation of Quantum can completely change the reward structure and the style of difficulty and the way that Final Fantasy XIV implements content from here on out. Final Fantasy XIV is not going gently into that good night, people. And you know what? I'm all here for it. And if you want to be here for it, you should leave a like and subscribe if you want to see my coverage and content for patch 7.3 of Final Fantasy XIV Dawntrail, MSQ, Hildebrand, the Alliance Raid, the Deep Dungeon when it comes out. All that and more, we'll be covering it on this channel. I have a TikTok, Twitch, and Twitter, Jmulls G. I have a Discord in the description down below. And we have a list, people, and we're checking it twice. Final Fantasy XIV hot takes abound, and it's our sacred duty to react to them. And if you want to witness a few of your own hot takes about Final Fantasy XIV and watch me react to them, you should check out this video right here. Stay safe, everybody. Have a great day, and I'll see you all next time. Bye-bye, everybody. Until we meet again!